been taken? Thank you. Item 2, approval of minutes of the October 7, 2019.
Mr. Chairman, if there are no additions or corrections, I go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Been a motion, a second. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3, communications. Are there any at this time, Mark? There's none then. Move on. Item 4, review concept plan for church off of St. Lawrence Drive. Discussion of future requests to rezone the vacant land west of St. Lawrence Drive. Mark, you want to start us off?
Mr. Mayor, the potential purchasers of this property are in the audience. In your packet is a breakdown and a drawing from the potential purchasers of what they were looking at for use of the property. It is not a petition at this point. It's merely looking for some discussion with the commission.
Okay. Luis, do you want to come up and say a few words? Yes, you do.
Good evening, Luis Solis, 1015 West Spring Pines. So I'm a member of the Church of the Light of the World here in Delavan. We're right now currently on between Marino and Franklin. We love our neighbors. And they loved us back for a very long time, but you know, we are a very active church. We've grown. We've been in a lot of prayer, asking God to guide us where we need to go. And we realize, you know, we've outgrown our temple now. And our neighbors, you know, sometimes we parked in the wrong areas, and you know, we love them. We understand. You know, they've been very patient with us, and we went into prayer a number of years back, asking God to give us a place that we could find so that we can build a church that has a proper parking, a place for the kids. Right now, it's a safety issue. After church services, kids, you know, the kids will be kids. They come out and run. There's not that safety net there for them. We've been blessed that, you know, it's been good. And so we've been in search through prayer, asking God to find a spot. We came across this property a couple of years back, but we didn't think it was the right place. We went back and asked God to give us that place He wanted, and we realized this is a place that we could use now. We came back to it again because we looked everywhere in Delavan, and pretty much this is pretty much it. So we are looking to purchase the property. There has been an offer submitted already with the contingency that we can actually use it as a church. Right now, currently, it's not zoned correctly. So that's what we're in the process of doing. We've hired a land surveyor who's been helping us, Combs and Associates, and they kind of drew up this plan for us so we can present it, and you can see kind of what it would look like. After speaking with the city staff, they suggested that one of the things was that road of St. Lawrence that we're looking at, that you're seeing on the map there, allowing that so it can get built eventually. It would be on the property, but there's room there. We're a community church, and we want the safety of everybody. It would help the buses through there as well. We discussed it. We see how it would work. Obviously, we're not we can't finance it, but it serves a purpose. I think it's going to be good for the community in general. So we just wanted to present that so you guys can see it, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
Does anybody on the commission have any questions?
I have a question for Mark. So, Mark, on this road use, was that road land dedication not required when it was subdivided before? I remember when that whole parcel was purchased and developed, that dedication wasn't required?
That's correct. The road extension of St. Lawrence is shown on the city's official map as being reserved for a future roadway. Typically, we would not require platting of a roadway until the roadway is ready to be constructed.
Oh, okay. So, all that you're requiring, all you would require at this point is, would we require the dedication, or would we require a commitment that at the point the road was within the whole plan of the city, that at that point the dedication would have to take place?
I think the thought is at this point, if they're going to have a designed plan for the property, that the right-of-way would be dedicated, and then the city council would have to discuss how much or when the roadway itself actually gets constructed.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I have one other question. I remember when that property was purchased and developed, and the gas station and the duplexes, I don't know what they technically are, were built. The developer at that point thought that there was going to be more buildable commercial space and had not taken into account the need for all of the drainage. And my question is, with this use, because I think it's important for the church to understand, what is our perspective about what other drainage requirements or management, particularly because we're adding a lot of parking out there, might be required at this point?
And I know we've touched on that in our staff discussions with their engineers, yes. This site has challenges. So they will need to address the stormwater runoff for the added area, for the new hard surface areas.
Okay. So my only comments about it is that I remember, I don't know why, some of the development that took place back then, and I remember that parcel was more complicated than I think the initial thoughts were when it was initially developed. And my only recommendation to you is, I don't think that there's anything difficult to do here, but just understand that there are some complications out there that resulted in changes in what the original development was and potential costs to making sure it works this time.
Yeah, thank you. We hired the.
Right, I'm not,
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions?
I would just add that, I like the concept of this plan. I think it would certainly help the bus routes and alleviate some traffic off of Creek Road. It'd be nice to complete that road. So, yeah.
Speed bumps would be something we would.
Well, yeah,
on there.
especially by the entrances where the church will be, but I certainly won't go fast there.
All right, thank you.
Mark?
So just a comment, on the comprehensive plan, which is the third attachment here.
Right.
This is shown as future business area. So what they're looking at doing is rezoning the current area that's zoned agricultural holding to business, and then it would also require a conditional use permit for the institutional use.
And, I mean, the city, as you guys have looked at the plan, there aren't substantial ramifications to losing that business use to institutional purposes, right? So, I mean, I understand the hoops, but it's not like that, you're not saying that we should look at that as a ramification of approval or anything like that.
It was
It's not like we're down to our last acre of business land, right?
Correct.
All right, are there any other questions? So, um, what's the next step here that, for the
The-
rezone?
The prospective purchasers would need to make a petition to the city for a rezone and then a conditional use permit. So this came in after the deadline for publication in the paper for this meeting, and they weren't ready yet. So it'll be coming up on future meetings.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. All right, let's move on to item 5. Review step 2 conceptual plan for a planned infill development. Review of and discussion of concept plan for step 2 of a planned infill development at 207 through 319 South Wright Street, the former Kmart Plaza redevelopment, including proposed land uses.
Good evening, my name is Brian Fisher. I'm with Anderson Ashton Design Build, address 2746 South 166th Street, Berlin, Wisconsin. I'm here on behalf of my clients that are looking to purchase that center and are slowly going about doing some general maintenance. They think they're re-roofing a lot of the facility now. And one of the thoughts that they had, and this is a pretty common occurrence these days with a lot of big boxes that are becoming empty and hard to refill, to take the old pick and save on the far end and convert it to self-storage. So this would be interior self-storage. It would be climate controlled, which I don't believe that product exists here in Delavan. I could be wrong, but it will be a very nice amenity. We are proposing when we come back for the actual step 2 to have an interior drive-in where people can load and unload and then drive out. If you don't know much about self-storage, it's a very low traffic use. So I think it'll be a really nice fit for that location as it will fill the space, but it's a very low impact, low traffic, low noise, low everything. And as far as the outside goes, we're talking about putting some signage on building to identify who the managing company will be for the storage facility, and then a fresh coat of paint, and then there'll be 120 by wide by 14 foot high glass overhead door that will service the drive-in facing right. So, if you have more questions, I'm happy to answer.
Denise?
A little clarification is I got a feeling it was the wrong plan. I'm not sure, it was the one I'm seeing in the plan does not seem to have the addition. I think the wrong one might have gotten. Is yours showing right?
The colors don't show up. None of the shading showed up.
Okay,
See, there's
so really, the plan that should have been in the packet is this one back here that shows the potential addition as well as the additional Dollar Tree. So I just want to bring that because
It's,
for some reason it's not, doesn't seem to be showing up with semi.
so, just to clarify, so what we're looking at in our packet says Phase 3, 22,500 square feet, which the shaded portion in that packet is much smaller than that. So you direct us to look at that, which just squares the back 2 buildings off, right?
And then this one also shows in order to take the Dollar Tree,
Right.
it's being recommended that
Right.
they have to replace that square footage along Wright Street.
Right.
Correct.
Until that plan is shown in that.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a phase 2. If it would ever get to that point, we would obviously come back and look at it as a phase 2, and then if the demand's there in a phase 3, it would allow us to fill in behind the existing pick and save with the addition I'm showing here. That's what we would want to come back and discuss.
So just that is, the GDP would provide for all 3 phases, but the PIPs would provide for, it would only be for each phase.
Each phase.
If they were to move forward.
Anybody have any questions?
Who would operate the self-storage?
It would be managed and operated by a company called CubeSmart.
So the new owner, we're going to just
Yeah, his business name is Star Delavan. LLC is the name of his company.
Okay, they'd lease to Cube, or,
They wouldn't, no, they just hire CubeSmart to manage.
okay.
Correct.
And I was unclear about where the drive-in bays were, if you could.
Well, here on the elevation, this is the demising wall between the Dollar Tree.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna pop the door in right here.
And how wide is that door?
16 feet.
Okay, so it's a single car access, a single vehicle access at a time.
Correct.
Right. And it's drive in and back out, or back in and
We're
drive
looking
out?
at two different approaches. Right now I have drive in and back out. I'd like to talk to the owner about driving in and one in and out the other, so get a lot of amateur drivers and the backup, that'd be great.
Yeah, I agree with that, and backing out right next to the entrance of the Dollar Tree, I am not sure I like that idea. Like you said, unexperienced drivers backing out of that open door, backing right into the access way to the Dollar Tree.
Well, and being a fan of mathematics of probability of hazard, if we multiply the backing out people by the walking in people, not anticipating a vehicle exiting a retail location, I think that if, I see the potential for an issue there.
I agree with you, drive in, drive out the back would be a nice idea.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm proposing to the ownership group. Initially, they wanted to do a drive-in back out, but I think it sets up very nicely to drive in and then out.
Go out and back.
And as one of the, if I can't remember what the reference was in the report, but there was some comments about better control of the traffic on the back side of the building, which right now is a two-lane alleyway for all intents and purposes, which used to be used for deliveries and waste hauling, et cetera. Obviously, there'd have to be some provision for traffic flow back there too. So, Mark?
The new owners have also talked to the tenants at the Dunham Sports and the others further south. They are aware that there's issues with cars and semis using their back drive as a shortcut. So I think the ownership group wants to look at doing something back there to reduce the shortcut option.
All right.
How common is it utilizing bigger box stores for storage?
It has become extremely common, especially when you look at all the Kmart's that have gone dark, the Sears stores locally, obviously Shopko. You've had pick and saves that have upgraded and left the smaller boxes to slightly larger boxes. And we're seeing, another one is Toys R Us. Those are just tall enough because how they used to rack that you could actually get 2 stories of storage inside. So around the country, you're seeing those uses commonly being turned to storage. I drove down Illinois a while back on Highway 12 through Woodstock, and I got into West Dundee, I think it was, and I was surprised to see some of the shopping centers that had been turned into U-Hauls. So you do see that quite often, but actually.
Yeah, following retail trade press, I've already seen some transfers of Shopkos for similar purposes, right? And so, yeah.
And I think the other nice thing about this use is that they're highly secure. So you have a lot of cameras, security cameras. You have key code access into the buildings. So it does also offer an extra level of security to the area, which I think is beneficial. And again, very low traffic. When you have initial rent up, you might get 4 to 6 cars an hour. Once you hit stabilization, 2 to 3 cars an hour. It's pretty common for something this large.
And I think that, in the report, I think that staff noting that given that there's a high, supply of better visibility, retail boxes still available and space for them still available, I think that the new owner is sharp to think about converting that segment of this center to this use. Because it's the least visible. We might all look at it as a high volume use because we may still remember it as a pick and save, but if you really take an objective view of the real estate in that corridor, has the least view, potentially the least appeal to a traffic-seeking retailer, if any exist in another decade.
And not to mention O'Reilly, built an outlot in
Right.
front and, potentially build another outlot retail. Dollar Tree, we'll see, but that's a future phase.
Mark, are we setting a precedent by doing this? If we, I don't know, just thinking out loud, if we allow this to happen, are we gonna, eventually if Shopko says, well, we wanna do the same thing, and, are we setting ourselves up for some potential problems?
That may be a discussion you would have at the step 3 review process. I know our city planner has mentioned that this is not it's not on Highway 50. It doesn't have direct visibility, so it's not a prime commercial spot. So I think that should be certainly a discussion item for the approval of a step 3.
Would you consider Shopko up on Highway 50?
They don't own it.
Huh?
No,
No,
as
I'm
an
talking about
example.
down the road for a different issue. Is that considered prime property?
Shopko would be considered because it's on 50 and it has visibility from the Interstate 43. The other thing is that this property, which none of the other ones really are adjacent to, I can't say, at least on the east side it might be, but Shopko is all surrounded by commercial. This property is adjacent to industrial, so from a transition standpoint, one, it's a PIP, so it's a different process and shouldn't set a precedent going through the GDP process as we're proposing. But two, that even with it, this is something that we're already only proposing it in that area that's already adjacent to manufacturing. So I do think it's unique from the other properties that we have available or that are available in terms of these larger spaces.
And Mike Slavny, I would say gave us blessings, but he didn't have major issues about this?
That would be correct. He did not have any large issues with this. He would, yes. Shopko, different story.
Yeah. Jeff, you had something?
Yes, do you know the ownership group, have they ever repurposed any of these buildings for anything other than self-storage?
I believe they have, yes. They do a lot of power supply, like ATVs, jet skis. I know they own a couple, or have owned a couple of those facilities in New York and Florida.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to item 6, public hearing, review and possible recommendation for George and Shirley Bashaw. Item 6.1, public hearing and request to consider rezoning 912 Racine Street and 147 North Harrison Street from business neighborhood to residential single-family RS3. Applicant is George and Shirley Bashaw. So I'd like to open up the public hearing at this time. And T, you want to start us off?
And let George come up here, or, I guess I'm not sure, Shirley, I guess, is talking.
So yeah, they're just looking to,
Yeah, is there no technical
Okay.
available?
Maybe that's a good
that
thing.
have
Yeah,
this?
I missed any.
No offense to the mayor, but he talks like this with his hand in front of his face, and
I
it's
do?
very difficult. Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now?
You bet, I can
Okay.
hear you now, but I couldn't before.
Really? Thanks for reminding me.
yeah. So basically George and Shirley are looking to rezone their house, to the RS3, and sell it. I think it's gonna help them with, their listing according to their realtor. The comprehensive plan is, allows for this. It's in conjunction with that, so I'll let Shirley talk if you guys have any questions.
Okay, it's just a simple rezone, so it makes it property more saleable. Any questions about? anything?
I don't have, I guess for me personally, I don't have a problem that it would be changed to residential.
You know where it's located down
Mhm.
there in amongst the residential.
Does anyone else have any questions? Does anyone in the audience have any objection for or against this proposal? Take it there is none. Any other comments from staff?
Just, Mr. Mayor, that the comprehensive plan does show this as, single family. It's currently zoned business, so by, the rezone would be in harmony with the comprehensive plan. And I believe it would assist the owners with potential sale of the property.
Okay. Well, then, if there's no other questions or comments, I will close the public hearing. Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you.
Item 6.2, review and possible recommendation of the Common Council regarding a request to consider rezoning 912 Racine Street and 147 North Harrison Street from business neighborhood to residential single-family 3, RS3. Applicant is George and Shirley Bashaw. Is there a motion to recommend?
Mr. Chairman, I go ahead and recommend to the Common Council the requested rezoning of 912 Racine Street and 147 North Harrison Street from business neighborhood to residential single-family RS3 based upon the findings that this proposed change would not be against the public interest and aligns with the city's comprehensive master plan.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second that motion.
It's been a motion, a second, any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Yes,
Do you want the Bashaws to be at the council meeting for this?
I don't think they need to, unless they want to. If, at our next council meeting, which is in a couple weeks, 3 weeks now? 2 weeks. If you wish to come to the council meeting, you may, but you're not required to. I don't think it's gonna be an issue from anybody from the council, but, you know, if council members had a question, they could ask you, but I don't see it being an issue, so. But it's up to you.
Right. Do you have to know tonight if we're coming in?
No,
No.
no, if you don't show up, that's okay too.
Possibly we'll show up to be here for it.
Well, it's,
But it's such a simple thing that I don't.
right, that's why I don't see any issue. I'm sure it'd be exciting night out for you guys to come to a council meeting. So, but no, it's all good. Thank you. All right, move on to item 7. Public hearing, review, and possible recommendation, the Kurt Overmeyer Jiffy Lube. Item 7.1, public hearing and request to consider a conditional use permit at 2031 East Geneva Street to allow for an in-vehicle sales or service land use within the business regional zoning district. Applicant is Kurt Overmeyer and Jiffy Lube. So at this time, I'd like to open up the public hearing. And you get started?
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Mowen with Greenberg Farrow Architecture Civil Engineers. We represent Kurt Overmeyer and Guggenheim. Kurt unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, so I am filling in for him. And we're here to discuss our Jiffy Lube proposal. The one thing that I wanted to point out, I think it was a typo in the agenda report. The hours of operation are not 6 a.m. to midnight, but rather generally they're about 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. They allow the franchisee to set their hours, but generally those are the hours that they set. And then on Sundays, they're generally open 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So I believe you've got everything in your packets, and honestly, I'm just here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience have anything to say for this project or against the project? Mark, you have any comments you want to make?
I think staff has gone through this. Just for clarification, this would be immediately east of Aldi's. It would be also require a land division along with it to create a separate parcel, or to split the parcel that's out there. But it's roughly 1 acre in size, I believe, is what they're looking at. It's a fairly small lot. And this would be, again, it ultimately has to come back to the council for the, because of the land use as in-vehicle sales and service.
Anybody on the commission have any questions?
Wonder if they're aware there's 13 other shops and 8,000. Wonder if they're realizing there's 13 other shops in an 8,000 populated community.
They do their due diligence, and they've got their market analysis. So they believe, we've been working with them for over a year, and they very vet their sites very well. So they wouldn't be here if they didn't think that the store would perform well.
Any other?
Is Mr. Overmeyer the franchisee?
He is with Guggenheim Developers, and they are developing the property, but the franchisee is actually an entity called Stonebriar LLC. So Guggenheim develops the property, they lease it back to the franchisee.
Okay, and Stonebriar LLC, do you have any, where are they located?
Yes, they are actually a subsidiary of Guggenheim
Oh, okay.
Developers, yes.
Okay, so.
Yes, Jeff.
Is there any wellhead protection issues?
Not on this side of the freeway, no.
Any other questions from the audience? Any other questions from staff? Any other questions from the commission? If not, then I will close the public hearing at this time. Item 7.2, review and possible recommendation of the Common Council regarding a request to consider a conditional use permit at 2031 East Geneva Street to allow for an in-vehicle sales or service land use within the Business Regional Zoning District. Applicant is Jiffy Lube Greenberg Farrow Engineers. Is there a motion?
Mel?
Yes.
I'd move to approve the conditional use findings as listed under the recommended conditional use findings and the conditional use request for the proposed new in-vehicle sales and service land use at 2301 East Geneva Street, located in the Business Regional Zoning District. Plans provided by Jiffy Lube, last revised October 30th, 2019, subject to the conditions of approval as listed under recommended conditions of approval with the applicant, Jiffy Lube and Greenberg Farrow Engineers.
Is there a second to that motion?
I would second.
And that includes all that was listed on the memo as well. All right. There's been a motion, a second. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 8, update on building zoning related matters.
Do you guys have any specific questions off of the report, or? I mean, I can talk about what's going on if you want.
Looks repetitive.
Yeah, most of it's kind of,
All right, just update us on the strategic materials thing. What's happened since the last time we talked about it?
so we're still going out there, checking to make sure if there is an odor. I would say 90% of the time there is still an odor. I don't know what happened in your closed. I'm gonna let Denise touch on that.
At this point, it's really being addressed by the council in closed session, so I'm not sure at this, the issue has not gone away, and we do expect that there'll be something at some point in time in the near future being presented to the Plan Commission in terms of a possible revocation or consideration of the revocation of their permit. But at this point, it is, the council is working on, under closed session on a couple of concerns.
All right, I guess I was just wondering if the smell has improved a little bit since then.
Not really. I mean, there's certain days like when it's raining really hard, you don't smell it. It's bad. But there's usually an odor out there, and even on the days where I would say that I don't issue a citation, there's probably still a slight odor. I mean, I try to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
But usually there's always an odor, but the days where there's not citations, it's either very light or it's not constant. So according to our code, they are allowed to smell, but they're not allowed to smell for more than 15 minutes a day constantly.
So,
Mel, so given that I just heard that we might be asked at some point to revoke, right? We can only revoke based upon an objective finding that they've violated a standard, okay?
Correct.
So, it would be helpful if the staff would provide prior to any kind of action,
Yeah, we are
less
keeping.
than time, hold on, something that would allow us to educate ourselves, so between a Friday and a Monday, we don't need to become experts on what our odor standards are, how we measure odor. I mean, we have a verb in here, quantify, which is an interesting verb when it comes to odor. So I would just think, if you're going to put us in a position to make a finding of revocation, please put us in a position where we have some objective standard.
Yep. We are, right now, we're just collecting as much information as we can and getting all the information there. I do have, on the days where where I say that there is an odor, we do have a dispatch is called and an officer does come out, so we at least have a second person, because it is hard to quantify. I don't have a scale that reads something. My nose is my scale. Yep.
So, they're supposed to just be recycling glass there, right?
Correct.
And the odor's coming from the garbage?
Yeah, so they base their, I've been in the facilities, when you look at it, it doesn't look like glass. It actually looks like a pile of garbage. I mean, when you look in the pile, you'll see diapers, you'll see, it pretty much looks like garbage. From what I've been told, they base their recycling off of weight. It's weight to glass. So when you see a big, huge pile, it looks like garbage, but out of that weight, a certain percentage of that is supposedly glass. I think that when they get a truck delivery, they measure it every so often. I don't know how often they measure that, but they're supposed, I think they say they operate at about 55%, something like that with the glass. But it's based upon the weight, so it's not off of the mass, it's off of the weight.
And that's being stored in that
Yes.
tarp-covered building?
No,
Or
not the tarp
in
covered.
the other building?
In the main building.
And that's where the odor's coming from?
Yes.
And how often are they shipping that stuff out?
I think that sometimes this stuff sits there longer. They have gone through different types of, through different personnel with management. They've been trying to, because we had a while where it didn't smell, but they've been trying to operate with first in, first out. They've been trying to use their misting system. They've been trying to keep certain doors down. You know, I've kind of talked to them about their operation, and at the end of the day, it's pretty much, I don't care what doors they have opened or closed, it's, you can't smell. But they are trying on their part to do different things to control that smell. But I think it's kind of at the end of the day, it's garbage and it's gonna smell like garbage. I think in California, we've tried to do some research because they own other facilities. I think in California they have, instead of operating at like 50%, they're like at 90%. But that's another thing that would be hard for, sometimes when we get these conditional uses, it's kind of hard to monitor all those things. Granted, if there's an issue, we can step in and try to do that. But I guess at the end of the day, it's kind of they're in violation of our zoning ordinance with smelling.
Can you just give me the reference in the zoning ordinance?
I think that's 23.711. 23.711.
Thanks.
Oh, yep. Yeah, so we did, from, I think it's Fairwind, Brian Pollard, we did receive an application for the condos in the marina over by Lake Lawn. See that today, right? Yeah, Friday. So they're gonna be kind of moving forward with that.
Good.
Will it be on our agenda in December?
They're looking right now, the first step would be an amendment to the GDP, and so that would be what would be presented at that point. And then, assuming that is approved, that amendment, then they'd be moving forward at the beginning of in 2020 with the PIP process.
Okay.
All right, if there's,
I have one more question.
Yeah.
On 307 East Walworth, is the warehouse storage something different than what's on the first floor?
So that is, the warehousing part on that is on would be the east side. So right now they only have the west side open to the public. There's you can get into that east side through a front door, but they kind of have that barricaded. They don't use that door. But that whole section is pretty much, they don't allow the public in there. There's not proper aisles. There's just a bunch of kind of stuff in there. So that part's not opened.
And so when we told them they couldn't warehouse, we were saying that in effect you're not retailing, you're warehousing.
On that east side,
and
correct.
You can't do that.
And they can't do
Okay,
that.
thank you. On the fence on 1108 Cottonwood.
Yeah, so
on the condition, they're weighing their options in relation to obtaining a conditional use permit.
correct.
So, I'm gonna just speak as a party of one here, right? I mean, as a party of one, a applicant who has not complied, who then decides that the appropriate case is to then get a use permit, and we say, yes, okay, pretty much creates an environment where anybody could do anything, hope they don't get caught, and then when they did get caught, come and ask for conditional use. And I think it would be a terrible precedent for us to set. And so I would hope that if there is a conditional use permit request, that the staff would say that there is some special circumstance here that the zoning did not anticipate, that created a weird application here. Because I mean, that's like saying I didn't know the law, so now I'm going to ask for
And
an exception.
And I guess in this situation, so technically if they do go for that conditional use, in order to meet everything on that conditional use, they would still have to move that fence back a little bit. So we would still make them have to do some things to meet our zoning code. But what happened in this particular...
Yeah,
Okay.
you did the history before.
Well, I guess with what I was going to say with that is that the homeowner actually hired Lowe's, and then they went through Lowe's, and Lowe's hired somebody else to do it, and it got put up. So when I'm dealing with this homeowner, they're saying that they had no knowledge of this.
But if
But-
I'm still the
Right.
agent, so like if I didn't go get the permit for the fence builder that put up my perimeter fence at 216 North 4th and talked to Mark about what it was, you know, I've got no excuse.
Right.
So I appreciate your sensitivity, but.
Right. I guess with going with this, I mean, it gives them an option, I guess, but it's also, I guess right now, the only recourse that I have is against the person that actually owns the property. And the person that owns the property is saying they hired Lowe's. And I'm trying to get, I guess I'm trying to get them to fix it. So right now, they're either gonna cut the fence down lower, or they're gonna have to come for that conditional use. And I understand what you're saying with setting that precedent, so.
So if they cut the fence down lower, it's still gotta be moved back though, right? Is that what you said?
Technically, no, the fence could be there at the 4-foot height. But technically, I believe it would have to be 50% opaque, which it's not currently.
So they would have to move it.
They could cut it down and kick out every other board.
Yeah. So no matter what they do, they have to do something.
Okay, I stand corrected. I get it. So it's at 6 feet now.
Yes, it's currently at 6 feet. And it also, the house that's next to them has a 6-foot fence, but that was there from a long time ago. So if they would have tore their fence down, they'd have to follow the same codes today. And then they do have that intersecting street, which shines all the lights into that person's property. So that's why they wanted it to be 6 feet. But that wasn't what the approval was. They should have done the conditional use ahead of time. They should have, and somehow by them it got overlooked.
I know it's not on the list, but, are you aware of that, you're aware of the 1615 Grevy Street, right? The pallets?
I believe I've talked to Jen O'Neill about
So
that.
you don't
Right?
know if that's been rectified?
I do not, but I do know that she's working on that.
Where's this 1615 where?
Grevy?
Oh, Grevy? Okay. All right, is there anything else? Thank you.
All right.
All right, item 9, consider rescheduling December Planning Commission meeting to December 9th, 2019. Is there any objection to moving it to the 9th instead? If not, then we'll have it on the 9th then. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. Meeting's adjourned.